So this year, quite intriguingly, went to American Fiction, which is one of the films I think we both spotlighted prior to the festival as one that we are very excited for. The directorial debut of Cord Jefferson, starring Jeffrey Wright, an actor I really love, and it was really excited to see in a starring role, in a role that some people are talking about as a film that could potentially net him an Oscar nomination. I don't know if it's necessarily like a splashy enough role that he's going to become a front runner, but you know, these People's Choice Award, the People's Choice Award winner does have this correlation with the Oscars. So first of all, let's talk about the movie, because I think American Fiction is one of my favorite films that I saw in Toronto. As we mentioned, from Cord Jefferson, it's his adaptation of the book Erasure, which is about a professor and a writer whose work isn't deemed black enough, who decides to write a novel sort of to pander to what he believes audiences like, and it starts to get out of his hands. It's a really interesting satire of creativity and the publishing industry and what audiences ask for as well. Art, I know this is one of your favorites as well. What was really interesting about American Fiction to you?
All the performances, the way that they set up a lot of the script. To me, this is one that the one award it's going to get, in my opinion, that I think it has a lock-in for, is screenplay. You're telling me it's an adaptation? Barbie's also going for original. I felt that this pretty much leaned more on the original side of things, but depends how they're going to play it with whoever ends up releasing it. To me, the screenplay is the strongest part of it, because there are moments where a lot of the jokes get over-delivered, but I think the depth of what it's about is what got a lot of people in our audiences to laugh alongside with it. I think the performances are really good. Yeah. I saw people talking about Jeffrey Wright having like the best performance out there of his career. Y'all haven't seen enough Jeffrey Wright. Compliments to the man. He's always going to come in, and this is your first. It's your first. I wouldn't say it's his best. By default, it's his best of the year, because he only had a small role in the Wes Anderson movie. I think everyone involved does a really great job with it, but I think it's the inversion of a lot of things that we've known from prior movies. There's a lot that I love about this movie that I feel has been art here on Intercut and LME all the way back to A to Z talking about these things, and seeing it in a movie made me like, yes, this is like just the basicness of what we've been talking about with how you break down media. It's like a movie about race while also making fun of the idea that it's about race, and that's the only thing it can be about. And the only worry that I'll give to this is that there are check marks in media where you get to movies that are now making fun of tropes such as the black people dying in a movie first. And the moment you cover that, it feels like you've progressed this far, only to then be like, okay, now we can do away with that. What is the next thing we are now hiding? So I am ecstatic for American Fiction. But as he was giving the Q&A at the premiere that we had the privilege of being at, he then talked about kind of how what it took to make this movie was so many no's until it was acceptable for producers to make it. So it feels like a win, yet at the same time it feels like, okay, now it's acceptable for this movie to be made. So what is the next? Is this the next cliche? To a degree. It's my cynical way of looking at it.
Yeah, sure. If you want to be cynical about it, sure. But like, it is also very funny considering that this is the same Toronto audience that a couple years ago gave Green Book the People's Choice Award, giving this one People's Choice Award. I don't know if that says more about the movie or like how audiences maybe have grown in their estimations. But it's kind of making fun of the same people who would give a movie like Green Book the People's Choice Award. So
that's my irony.
Yeah. And he's steering into the skid there, I guess, if you want to say. Like it feels a little bit like it's trying to simultaneously entertain and poke fun at its audience. And I don't know, I like films that like do stuff like that. I'm sure it's going to launch a lot of really interesting think pieces, but
you're not annoyed by those think pieces already?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely annoyed by that.
And that's my point. It's like, I love it. It's like you say a joke, but you're just a little upset that while someone found it funny, they finding it funny for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still just, there's so much in it that I thought was really like cutting and sardonically funny in a way that films so rarely are to me, just like touching a true thing in culture that a lot of people don't want to touch. I'm fascinated to get into more conversations with people about this movie once they have the chance to see it, but I highly really recommend it. I think to me, like, Bottoms is my funniest movie of the year, but my laughs in this movie like felt the deepest, if that made sense.
Easily.
Like it hits something inside you, and it's like, oh wow, that is a very hilarious observation, or whatever. And yeah, the performances too. I mean, it helps to have a cast as deep as this one, beyond Jeffrey Wright, Sterling K. Brown, Tracy Ellis Ross. I really like John Ortiz, who showed up in a couple TIFF movies this year.
He did.
He's really fun as his agent in this movie.
All my grievances to the side. The way, like you were saying, that it talks about not just the subject, but how we react to the subject.
Yes.
The opening of this movie gets you on board with what it's going to be about, that people who are offended for you are more so doing that for themselves than any other thing. And I love the conversations that it's having. What leads you to think a certain way because of whatever virtue signaling or what you think something should be about, not realizing that in trying to fix a problem, you're almost perpetuating that problem.
Right.
I find the awkwardness of that humor beautiful. And that's why I love a lot about this movie. I don't know if your audience had that, because I think you were in the P&I.
Yeah, I was in the P&I.
It's one of those movies that split between like cultural jokes and then what would be the business, because he is a writer. So there were jokes that you can tell who was press in our screening or who works in the industry when they were talking about how nobody reads anything. There were certain points when they mentioned that there was no more budgets for editors. All of those jokes hit. And then for half of my audience, the other jokes, when they were playing montages to other movies, they had no idea what was up on screen. They didn't know the difference between his parody and then what was the movie they were playing? When they were playing like the montage for the fake BT network, but they were playing Get Rich or Die Trying, and nobody knew that was a real movie.
Right.
So I'm curious to see how this plays, because I think this has a Thanksgiving release, to see what people gravitate towards the most, or if there's like a mix of it between the culture that he's coming from as a writer and being in the business, and then what it's like to just talk about the media that gets consumed out there.
Totally. I know some people weren't as taken with the whole like familial melodrama that is kind of intertwined. I personally, I think it is something that kind of anchors the movie. Yeah, to me, I really like that too. The movie. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe we're going to be the outliers on that one, but that all worked for me too. I like this. But
what I'm saying is that's what makes you miss the movie, though.
Yeah,
it's American fiction, because what you think a black person's story should be is what he's making fun of, and in that story that he's creating to sell, he is telling you, no, those same issues that happen in that cliche thing that you always want to see people in. He's doing it the same way. He just lives in the Hamptons. He's still going through the same turmoils, all of that. And when I hear people talk about, but I thought the jokes were funny and what it talked about, but I didn't really care about his super rich life. That is like the whole crux of the movie. And I think missing that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you enjoy the rest of it then.
Absolutely.
But hey, a lot of discussions to come for this one.
Absolutely. Circling back to the awards talk, as you mentioned, I think it's definitely going to be a strong contender in screenplay. I'd love to see Jeffrey Wright get the nomination here. I would also not be surprised if they do some kind of Sterling K. Brown supporting actor campaign. Yeah.
That porch talk?
Yeah. I mean, he's excellent here.
Ooh.
So cutting, so funny, but in a dry way, but also just very real in the way that Sterling K. Brown can be. Yeah. He's like one of those.
Marvel movie?
I always forget how ripped he is, and then he just shows up and does.
Ripped, bro.
Yeah,
crazy stuff. No, really good performances all around. Even some performances that aren't there as long as you expect them to be. That really caught me off guard. But yeah, even with all of my worries to the side, American Fiction easily is in my top 2 movies of the festival. I keep flipping between 2 of them. Both of them are going to get very interesting reactions once they both get released. But I think this one was a blast, and I think it's very funny.
Yeah, we'll talk about American Fiction a lot more on Intercut, I'm sure.